Hello, you guys. So I know I'm very late with this live. This is why I don't like to schedule my lives. Like I have ideas, but I don't particularly like to schedule ahead of time because my intentions and I have like a whole life that I'm living. So my intentions and what I can actually do on YouTube vary. So this is why my lives are always super impromptu and my lives are not normally scheduled. I know so many of you want me to fix that, but I apologize. It just may not be workable. I might just have to do it when the spirit moves me, so to speak. But I wanted to have a conversation about how motherhood is not equivalent to goodness. I have heard a lot of conversations with regard to, especially in this whole gender war climate, that sort of uplift the fact that women are raising children by themselves. Now, if you are not new to my channel, you know that I personally do not think that women should raise children alone. I think that when women get very stressed because women aren't meant to carry the burden of two people, that they are not at their best and that it can actually be very dangerous for an extremely stressed woman to raise a child alone. I think women really do need the male presence as a balance for her energy and also to pick up a lot of that work. And I'm going to be doing a separate live about a lot of things that have been weaponized against mothers, such as women who are highly stressed in utero, causing neurological damage to their children so that that can affect the child's temperament when they get older. I've heard a lot of these things weaponized against women. And so I want to acknowledge before I talk about bad mothers, I want to acknowledge that we do need to have a conversation about the way that women who are pregnant and mothers are treated and how the priority should be creating an environment that is able to cultivate the most peace for them and comfort, emotional, mental comfort for them as possible. Because at the end of the day, women are who spend the majority of time with children. And because women spend the majority of time with children, women are also the people who physically abuse children the most, and women also become the gatekeepers for access to other abuse. If you listen to my video on single mothers and the protection of children, I talked about this. So I want to say something because the first thing that I notice that women do is we get really defensive, right? And we start talking about, well, what about what this person's doing? And what about what that person's doing? And I hope as women, we can be mature enough, right? And we can have a care for our duty, right, as women, um, to not try to pass the buck, not because other people don't have culpability, because other people have culpability, but because what we can control is we can control what we as women and we as mothers do and how we interact with each other. So, I want to go into the fact that when we talk about, and a lot, and this is, I'm going to be honest about what prompted this discussion outside of a general love for children. You guys know I love children, I love women, um, and I'm really passionate about the protection of women and children. And at the end of the day, when I hear adults speaking about their childhood experiences, what I recognize is every adult begins as a child, right? And so, in a lot of these male spaces, some of the most vitriolic, some of the most hateful, some of the most terrible male spaces, I've been hearing the men talk about these negative relationships they had with their mothers. And would see when the women were present, they were kind of dismissing this, like, these men are just making excuses and blah, blah, blah. But I believe them, you guys. I believe that these men didn't have good relationships with their mothers. In fact, my advice to women is that when a man does not have a good relationship with his mother, that 9 times out of 10, he will not make a good partner. A man who does not have a solid relationship with his mother makes a very bad partner. And a solid relationship doesn't mean that he likes her, because sometimes you can have toxic mother son relationships where the mother is more of a girlfriend, right? or the mother is extremely overbearing, but a healthy relationship with their mother. And so when I see men who have broken, dysfunctional relationships with their mother, I automatically presume that they don't like women. And so the question is then, what responsibility do we as women have, the people who give birth to all humans, right? Women give birth to all humans, both male and female. What responsibility do we have in the cultivation of these new human beings? And how does our behavior as women affect the women and the men that will be growing up in the future? When we look at society, yes, the men play a role, and I don't want to have to keep saying this because women are, a lot of women don't like to take accountability, just like the men don't like accountability. And the first thing, well, what about the dads and blah, blah, blah. But we're not talking about the dads today. We're talking about women and women who abuse their children and what the risk factors for women abusing their children are and what the results are when we abuse our sons and our daughters, right? I want to discuss that today because as hard as I went against child sexual abuse, which is men abusing children sexually, I want to go as hard against physical abuse. And I want us to have an honest conversation. I myself am a child who had a father that never laid a finger on her, never laid a hand on me. My mother was severely abusive, okay? And my parents were separated. So when I hear people talking about motherhood as if simply, now granted, I have tons of respect for my mother. You guys know my mother died of cancer. I cared for her literally until the day she died. I dressed her body. I loved my mother. Losing my mother was a huge loss to my life. And I know that she suffered many things as a child because of the failures of her mother, right? She suffered many things as a child that created her to be the person that she was. And I had the benefit of discussing that with my mother before she died and throughout the years, and really coming to understand what broke her as a person. And at the end of the day, a lot of mothers are walking around as broken people. And because they are broken people, they are harming their children. And this harm that we do as mothers, because nobody is as close. Now, women love it when I talk about, the sanctity of the womb and how important women are and how important motherhood is. And I feel very passionately about that. But I feel equally passionate that women should be responsible in their motherhood and that as a mother, we don't make excuses. This doesn't mean that other people can't be wrong, the father can't be wrong, men cannot be wrong. But at the end of the day, only women are mothers. And as the people who spend most time with children, as the people who carry these little human beings in our bodies, as the people who will raise them predominantly, we have so much impact over the type of people that we produce. And we need to accept accountability for the fact that a high concentration of mothers are not good mothers. And I'm just going to keep it real. The same way I say most people aren't fit for marriage, the same way I say that there's a shortage of men who are good leaders, I'm going to say that most mothers are not good mothers. And I'm going to open up a panel because I'm sure people are going to have opinions on this, but I can prove that most mothers are not good mothers because I can look at the behavior of adult men and women in mass, and that is evidence that they are not being raised with at least one really strong role model. So let's talk about it. Erica said, I don't talk to my mom anymore. I appreciate you saying that, Erica. I went periods of time in my life where I couldn't speak to my mother too, right? Because it didn't help me as a person. It didn't help me be a good person. And as a mother, you guys know I have a vlog channel and I share my vlogs with you guys because I want you guys to see that I'm consistent with who I am. And you can see who I am reflected in the way that my children are. I had to really be honest about who I was so that I could bring my best to the table as a mother. And so I hope that we can be open to having an honest conversation and not try to put motherhood on a pedestal, because all people who are mothers are not good. And all mothers do not create good people. And all mothers aren't really, they might be feeding the kids and caring for the kids when they're sick, but a lot of moms have animosity. A lot of moms are selfish. A lot of moms are violent. And this is something as women that we have control over and that we can stop. Okay. So let's talk about some of the things that cause mothers to be abusive to their children so that we can really discuss, are we in this risk group? All right. And I'm going to be honest about what of these things applies to me as a woman and what I've had to guard myself against as a woman so that I can be the best mother I can be. Right. These are things I watch in myself. These are things I implore women to watch in each other. And I want to say this, that I say this with a heart, that when we hear even men, right? And when we hear men and women talking about the fact that they have bad experiences with their mothers, and we see that people do not have loyalty to women, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, right? That's a saying because it's true. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So if we can get control over our mothering and we can be wise in using our power as mothers, then we can literally change the face of society through our children. We have so much power as women. And I respect women too much to not have a real conversation with you guys. So if you use drugs, be that marijuana, yes, I'm going to throw marijuana on the table, or alcohol. If you are abusing that, if you're drinking every day, if you're smoking weed every day, if you're doing other drugs every day, the chances are that you are not being a good mother and you are possibly physically or mentally abusing your children. Just period. A person who lacks a sober mind does not behave in a sober way. If you have mental health issues, this includes depression. And I think this is where a lot of us women, we can really relate to this. Maybe your child's father or your husband or your boyfriend is not the greatest person. Maybe they're not helping you. And this is causing you to feel depressed because you feel overwhelmed. When we are depressed as women, it is easy for us to speak to our children wrong, to physically harm our children. And so a depressed woman is a dangerous woman toward a child. If you are feeling sad and depressed, that's something that you have to check. You have to check that when you're dealing with your children. You can't look at your little boy's face because he looks just like his father. And because his father is such a terrible person, you start to take out that anger on what is essentially his splitting image. You can't look at your daughters, right? And because they're expensive to care for, or because they're a little bit moody, you start taking your overwhelmed, kind of depressed, frustrated, overworked, overtired energy and you push that out on your kids. They walk to the door and just say, "Hey, mom," and you're like, "Go away," or whatever you do. Or you might physically chastise them in a way that's harmful to them, right? Depressed moms can be dangerous moms. And depressed moms are often the ones who are going to be using alcohol or drugs, right, as a way to cope. Oh, that's a good one, Energy Matcher. Energy Matcher said, and I think this is true, my grandmother told me Black men treat Black women the way white men treat them, and Black women treat Black children the way Black men treat them. Your grandma is wise. I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. And at some point, it's sort of like, for those of us who were abused, right? For those of us who were abused, at some point, I can say I am abusive or I am not making the best choices because somebody harmed me. But at some point, We have to choose, no matter who does something wrong to us, that we will do something right. That's the choice I have made as a woman who survived a very abusive family situation. And I hope that that's the choice that many of you will choose to make, is that we are not here to blame other people for our pain, even if other people caused it. We're here to take accountability and to make better choices so that we don't help perpetuate a system of brokenness. And as mothers, I can't express how strongly I feel about this. We have so much power to create people who will be different than the people that hurt us. We do have power to do that. And I really want us to embrace that power. And that goes to abuse and neglect. If you were abused as a child, we know that a huge percentage, the majority of Black women, have been sexually abused as children. And many of us have been physically abused as children. Hold on, my house is so hot. Let me turn my heat off. So I'm sorry, I had to turn off my heat, you guys. I was like burning up. Um, so when you were abused as a child, speaking to the women, again, not saying men cannot be abusive, but I'm talking to women today. Women who are abused, be that sexually or physically, and honestly, if we're honest, Black women, most of us were both sexually and physically abused as children. Let's just keep it real. A lot of us were physically and sexually abused as children. So a lot of us are carrying a lot of baggage. And when you are harmed as a child, you have the propensity to harm your children. And you have to be really careful about that. One of the things that helped me become the mother that I am today, which is not perfect, I still have so much work to do on myself, is talking to my mother. So my mother was abusive toward me and violent toward me. And that really scarred me. And it made me feel that I personally didn't have value. So I could easily end up in an abusive situation because I was accustomed to not being treated well and not being loved and honored as a person. And when I talked to her and she told me the stories about the levels of abuse that she suffered in her household because my grandmother failed to protect her children, and chose a man over the safety of her children, right? When my mother told me the stories of the things that happened to her and her siblings, the first thing I thought to myself is, I will never be that mom. And I have worked very hard to never be that mom, to never be the mom that would pick a man over her children, to never be the mom that would harm her children. And I have some pretty well behaved kids, but I talk to my children in a way that they can understand because I have children of varying ages, from adults to little ones. And I let them know that I don't ever want them to be afraid of me. I want them to be good people because I grew up afraid and I don't want them to fear me, but I want them to do things because they're right. And I chose to have that kind of relationship with my children because I grew up being harmed as a child and I didn't want to harm my kids. But so many of us who grew up like this, go get a switch from the tree. I know I used to get thrown in, bathtubs full of water and, I would get spanked with a belt, like a leather belt in the bathtub because then it wouldn't leave welts. And I went to a private school, right? Because people could argue, and my mom did, and a lot of us mothers do argue this, well, I work so hard, I provide everything, nobody's helping me. And all of this frustration, a lot of us, especially Black women, right? Because we are often stuck. Black mothers, Black aunts, Black grandmothers, we get stuck with the full burden of raising children. And that's a lot of work. And so a lot of times we're thinking, man, I have had to sacrifice so much. I work so hard, and this kid can't even do the right thing. And then our reaction toward that child is much the way people treated us when we were growing up, which is as an inconvenience, as a burden, as somebody that needs to stay out the way and not be any more cumbersome because you're already feeding them, you're already clothing them, you already take care of them when they're sick, right? You're already giving these awesome birthday parties. I know me, I had birthday parties where one year I had presents literally stacked up to the ceiling. Literally. I went to a private school. I had fur coats. I grew up very privileged on the outside, but on the inside, because my mother had been abused and because it was a burden to her, having to worry about me, she took that frustration out on my little body. And many women do this. And I know for a fact that you guys have seen women harm their children, and many of you may have harmed your children or were harmed as a child. So we know that this is true. So when we see these angry adults who don't respect women, I want as women for us to not pretend like we don't know where that hatred comes from, where that anger comes from. When we say, well, you could be talking about your own mother and people don't care because their mother was a trash person, I want us to not pretend as women that we don't know where that kind of hatred and anger is stemming from. I want us to be honest as women because us being honest will make us change so that we can take control over the one thing we can control, which is our womanhood, our motherhood, the way we choose to nurture. That is something that we have full control over. Because as a mother, your children idolize you. As a mother, you're more important to them than anybody else until you destroy that relationship. We as mothers, we destroy our relationships. And then those people who we've destroyed a relationship with, they grow up to despise us. And I always hear mothers, I talked to one mother. And her son was not a great person. And I'm going to be honest, when I knew him, he wasn't a great person, but the way that he was, I understood it. I understood it. I could tell that he had been abused. Because the way that he talked, if you're a person that's been abused, the way that he talked reminded me of a lot of the things that I thought and I had to work through, right? He lied a lot. He had low self-esteem and it would expose itself in different ways. And anyway, when I talked to his mother, she tried to act like she didn't understand what was wrong with him. Right? I don't know why he's like this. I did my best. This isn't anything I taught him, and blah, blah, blah. I even locked him up, she said, in a psychiatric institution. Who knows mothers like that? I know mothers like that who they are crazy and something's wrong with them, but they try to go get their kids psychological help. Mothers who tell their kids that they have mental illnesses when the person who's mentally ill is the mom. She was one of those moms. And he grew up to be a broken, twisted human being. And when I talked to his mother and she was just claiming total innocence and she had no idea how he ended up this way, I was disgusted. I'm going to be honest, I was disgusted. Because as a mother, when I see things in my children that I don't like, I can see where I may have mirrored that, or I allowed them to be around a person that mirrored certain behavior, and that they are simply picking up on what I've allowed to come into my home. And what I try to do is I try to be careful about what I allow my children to be exposed to. I'm not talking about what the world will expose them to, but what I expose them to as their mother. The things they see me accepting, the people they see me accepting, the ideologies and the behaviors that they see me okay with. I can control what they see their mother approving or disapproving of. And so when I see something in them, I'm able to pinpoint where that came from, or I'm able to combat that with my choices, my behavior, who I bring in my home, who I choose to be friends with, the music I listen to, what I watch on television, right? Well, they don't get to watch television. I don't do that, but you know what I'm saying, right? So there are things that we can control. When you have people turn out badly, again, I'm not saying fathers don't play a part in this because there's always a woman who's trying to skirt accountability by talking about what about the dads? Look, I talk about the men all the time. But today I'm simply talking to mothers because as women, we can't control what a father does, but we can control what we as mothers do. So let's talk about the things that we can control and not the things we cannot control. We can control ourselves. We can make the decision to be our best selves. And I'm tired of mothers saying, I did the best I could. Let me tell you something. I would like to think that I really do, pretty well as a mother, but I certainly am not doing the best I could do. I'm certainly not doing the best I can do. And you guys can see me interacting with my kids because I have a channel where I share that with you. And a lot of you might look at me and go, she's a really great mom. But I tell you right now, I am not doing the best that I can do. I can do better. So when a mom tells me I did the best I could do, she's lying. We can always do better. You're not doing the best you can do. I'm not doing the best I can do. Let's at least be honest about the places that we can grow and do better. A person who thinks they've maxed out we don't do the best we can do in anything. What in the world? That's not even realistic. There's always room for improvement. But somehow, when it comes to motherhood, when we fail as mothers or when we're failing as mothers, our defense mechanism is I did the best I could do. I did the best I could do. Instead of admitting that I can do better. I need to do better. This isn't my best. And if we're honest as mothers, sometimes we do things and we know that it's not our best. We know that it's not our best. Um, Chocolate Chunk said, mother equals martyr. I mean, in a way, there was this study that said that people without kids are happier. But I wouldn't say mother equals martyr. I would say being a parent. Being a parent is a self sacrificing thing. And I know that the common rhetoric is you don't self sacrifice to be a parent. The best type of parenting is where you don't have to sacrifice anything of yourself, but you're still somehow a parent. Fathers should do the same, but again, we're not men, right? I'm not talking to men. I'm a woman. I have a vagina. So I can't sacrifice as a father. I can only sacrifice as a mother. But yes, being a parent, and maybe more women need to think about this before they become mothers, right? Before we have sex, why don't we think about the gravity of what motherhood is, what parenthood is? It is an endeavor in being sacrificial. And that's the truth. It's an endeavor in choosing somebody over yourself, which is a positive thing. Many of us need to learn how to get off our own jock. Some of us are so self centered. And this is something else that leads to abuse. People who are self centered. People who are self centered. When you're self centered, it will lead you to abuse your children, to neglect your children. Oh, I just want to go out on this date. I just want to go to this club. These freaking kids. So you leave them with any old person because you just need a babysitter. I just need a babysitter, right? And then that person ends up abusing your child because you're selfish, because you just had to go out. You just needed that space Because if I don't take care of me, I can't take care of you. So let me leave you with this person who turns out to not be a safe person. How many people were abused by people who were watching them? Let's just be honest. People whose homes you were left over, babysitters, because mom had to do something and she was by herself and she just needed her space. So she was happy whenever somebody offered to take her kids off her hands. How many of us were abused because of that? A lot of us were. A lot of us were put in abusive situations because we weren't prioritized, because prioritizing us would have made it harder on our parents. How many of us are leaving our kids? We don't know who's coming in and out of the house. Recently, a family member very close to me was like, send the kids to me for the summer. Hold on, you guys. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Royalty One. Yeah, it is Royalty One. Because that's so true. Because we carry so much burden and we're so heavily criticized as women, and because the stakes are so high, we do, and I am no different. Like if somebody like were to come to me and criticize my motherhood, I would get offended automatically. It's like I don't know about you, but I would, because it's really an indictment on the type of people that we're creating. And so it's hard to hear that we can be better as mothers because we're so sick of being criticized. It's like, you come do this crap, right? Isn't that what it's like? It's like, you come do this. This is a lot of work. It's easy to tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing when you're not the person that has to do it. If you're a mother, you know what that feels like, especially if you're a single mother. Like it's easy for you to come in here and be hypercritical about what am doing, but you don't have to do that. You're not over here trying to keep the lights on, feeding anybody, taking care of people when they're sick. You're not over here choosing to buy somebody clothes over getting you clothes. You're not over here stressing about, if you've got food in the fridge or not, but you have all the criticism for me. That's how it feels when you're a mother. It's like, look, back off, sir, back off, ma'am. Like I'm the one who's busting my butt over here and not even feeling 100% happy. Let's be honest. A lot of our motherhood looks like that. Many of us, that's how we feel sometimes. But we're not allowed to say it, right? We're not allowed to talk about it. And this is why a lot of people are railing against motherhood. They're like, these people are out here pretending like having kids is the most fabulous thing ever. This stuff sucks. And a lot of people are calling us out on our BS because they grew in homes with women, specifically talking to the mothers, not saying that the fathers are not dropping the ball too, you guys, but I'm a woman, so I'm talking to women today. They grew up watching themselves be despised by their own mothers. They grew up suffering because somebody was mad that they had to worry about feeding them. They grew up neglected because mom just needed a flipping break from being a mom, right? So when we are neglected and abused as children, we will often neglect and abuse. So if you've been abused in your life, that means when you step into your motherhood, just like me, right? I was abused in my life, just like me. We have to be careful. We have to be all the more careful because we have to watch ourselves that we don't perpetuate the things that were perpetuated against us as mothers. When you are a single parent or you have many children, I am a mother of many, as my eldest daughter likes to call me. They call me mother of many because I have many children. You guys know that my eldest child he's in his late 20s. He's getting close to 30. He's just a few years off from 30. And my youngest child is turning 7 this month. All right. I'll be sharing the birthday party on my vlog channel with you guys. So he's turning 7. So I have children that are literally like 25 years apart, or no, 20 years apart. I have children that are 20 years apart. It's crazy. So not only do I have many children, I've been having children. I've been a mom for a long time, right? Going on 3 decades now, I've been a mother. And when you're a single mother, right, that is very hard. And when you have multiple children, that is very hard. The more kids you've got, and when you're doing it by yourself, it increases the chance that you will not do right by your child. And so often we focus on, am I dressing my child the best? Did they get the best toys that they need? Does the room look nice? Is my house being clean? And some of us don't even worry about a clean house. You guys know, I'm very fastidious when it comes to my home. Um, but honestly, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Sometimes people look at my home, this is just a side note, and it's extremely clean, and I am very crazy about it being clean. But do you know that how clean I am is because I was abused by my mother? Because if I didn't keep everything perfect as a child, I would get beaten because my mom was really particular. So I keep the house clean, but I'm more generous with my children with I teach them to be clean, right? But I teach them to be clean so that they know how to keep a home, um, and how to care for themselves. But I don't freak out on them, and I would never beat them the way I was beaten for not keeping things clean. And I've actually, as clean as many people think my home is, it could be cleaner, but I've really calmed down a lot and done a lot of work on myself because a lot of the abuse I suffered that makes me kind of like Susie Homemaker, you know what I mean? Um, I don't want my children to have that level of anxiety because I like literally get anxiety when things are not right. And I get anxiety because I used to get beaten if things were not right. You know what I mean? So again, just I had to analyze my own motherhood, and I had to recognize like I could become like tyrannical about like a tiny piece of trash on the floor. Like literally, if one little tiny piece of trash is on the floor, I could become tyrannical over that, right? I could be the mom, like my mom was, to make you wash the counters 7 times because you are going to get it right, or to pick up every little piece. I had to do this as a child. If I vacuumed and the floor wasn't clean correctly, I would have to go and pick up every little tiny itty bitty thing off the carpet by hand. And if I missed even one thing, I would get beaten. And so a lot of people look at my home, right? And they're like, "Oh, she does everything from scratch and she's so clean." And a lot of people think that's fake. It's not fake. It's actually I could be worse, right? I'm not as bad as I used to be. But it's because I was severely abused as a child. I had to be perfect. I had to look perfect. I had to get perfect grades. I had to keep a perfect house or I would get beaten. Everything had to be perfect, 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 right? So as a mother, I had to learn to not expect my kids to be perfect and to allow them to be themselves. Now that's my personal struggle as a mother, is not trying to control my kids' personalities, allowing them to have voices, letting them not be perfect, letting them make mistakes, and letting that be okay. That's my personal struggle as a mom, but your struggle may look different, right? I'm not big on spanking because I got beat a lot as a child. But, your struggle may be different. And we have to be honest as mothers about like, what are our struggles, right? What are our struggles? What are the things that are really difficult for us because of how we were raised, because of what we're instilled in? How will we be better mothers than what we got, right? And this doesn't mean we don't love our moms. I love my mom. I mean, my mom has passed away and my heart hurts for losing her because for all her flaws, the one person I knew I could always go to was who? My mom. For all of her flaws, if I had a problem, I knew that woman was going to try to fix it. But I still want to be a better mother. I want to be a better mother than she was. I want to be a better mother than even I am right now. And that should be our goal, because when we don't make that our goal, we raise people who are not good people. Everybody does not come out of an abusive situation or an unhealthy situation with their mother. And some of you might be saying, well, I don't beat my kids. I don't this and that, but do you yell at them? Do you call them stupid? Do you tell them they get on your nerves? Do you get frustrated if they want your attention? Are you neglectful? Do you sit them in front of a television and not give them quality time? Do you think that you can buy them things and that buying them things is the equivalent of loving them? Like I said, we all have areas that we may not recognize are abusive that are abusive. And sometimes we don't recognize that we're abusing our children because our starting point isn't healthy. So if you don't have a healthy starting point as a woman, take time to evaluate it. Because which one of us wants to raise a child who grows up to not respect or hate women because the experience with the most important female figure in their lives, who were their mothers, was not good. It was not positive, right? None of us want to be the mom that creates a monster because they don't have a good reference point to look back on. Even, bringing men in and out of the house, that can affect, are you raising a daughter that's going to basically whore her body out? Be a teenage mom because she sees her mom with man after man after man after man. Are you going to raise a boy who's a womanizer because he saw his mother with man after man after man after man? Did you prioritize your vagina and your loneliness over your children? This can look many different ways. What is your Achilles heel? What are my Achilles heels? What are the areas that we need to work on so that we can be better mothers and produce the best people possible? That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right, East Coast Candy. You don't have to beat a child to be abusive. There are so many ways that we can be abusive. And we may not recognize that we're doing it, or sometimes we do recognize it. Like, have you ever had a moment? I've had these moments as a mom where I recognize the thing that I do is wrong, but I've already done it. When I have those moments now, 27 years into motherhood, I go and I apologize. And I've also given space for my children to come to me and to tell me when they are not okay with something. So here's goes something. I had a nickname for my kids that lasted about 2 weeks, and it was the Brat Pack. I'd be like, come on, Brat Pack, get in the car, Brat Pack. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to take the Brat Pack to chess club or whatever, right? And my kids came to me and they came to me unified, my little ones. And they were like, can you not call us the Brat Pack? Like, that's not nice. We don't like it. And I stopped because to me, it was just a nickname because they're bratty sometimes. But for them, that was harmful. And I had to be, I had to make myself, first of all, I had to humble myself, right? To know when I do something that's not okay. So if I raise my voice now, if I were to raise my voice and like yell at somebody now, I would actually go and I'd apologize. That's the person I am now. Do you know what I mean? I would say, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, that without fail, if I yell, I apologize. But I normally end up apologizing because I will either stop myself in the moment. I'll say, you know what? I'm sorry. I should not have yelled at you. That was not okay. It's not okay for me to yell at you. It's never okay for anybody to yell at you. Like, you deserve respect. I can talk to you. I don't want anybody yelling at me. I shouldn't yell at you. And sometimes I'll be so mad, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be frustrated. Maybe they tore the house apart or, got sugar everywhere. I mean, this doesn't happen anymore because my kids are older. Um, and I'll know that I shouldn't have done something, but I won't own it. And I've given my children space to like come and be like, hey, when you did this, I did not like that. That hurt me. And I push my little mommy pride to the side and I recognize that I need to be loving and hear them. And I will apologize. Now, this is something for me that I've worked on, but you might need to work on something different. You know, you might need to work on something different. The point is that imagine if I never heard them, if I just kept yelling, or if I kept making up nicknames for them that they didn't like, um, if I kept being hypercritical and I never heard them out. Well, those are people that could grow up to have problems. And I would have been the person to see those problems. Like as mothers, our our most important job is creating new human beings that are whole and strong, mentally strong, emotionally strong, and healthy. Our job as mothers is to create a perpetual safe space, as the snowflakes say, for our children. A place that they always know, like, if all goes wrong, if it all hits the fan, the one person I'll definitely go speak to is my mom. The one person I'll always be honest with is my mother. That's my goal. And I tell my kids this. I'm like, look, no matter what happens, no matter how terrible it is, I may not be happy, but you come to me and you tell me because I will help you fix it. I'll do everything I can to fix it, no matter what it is. Don't hide anything from me. But I have to create a relationship with them that lets them know that I respect them as a mother should, not as a friend, because I'm not their friend, but as a mother. And that's something else. Are you the friend mom? I know a lot of moms that are the friend moms, the cool moms. They're not moms at all. You know, their little boyfriend talks like, oh, he's so cute. Yeah, he's cute. Yeah, you should totally, it's like they're talking to their girlfriend or their boyfriend. A lot of moms who make their sons the men of the house, right? Treat their daughters like little women. Like there can be harm in that too. Let's talk about spanking, right? And corporal punishment, and how if you were spanked as a child, you can go overboard. And also, what's appropriate? Like, how long is it appropriate for you to pull somebody's pants down and hit them on the bum? When does that start being degrading, especially if you have a little boy, right? What does that teach your child about boundaries and body autonomy? In my house, people are allowed to say, don't touch my body. Literally, it's hilarious because when my kids are little, you'll hear them going around the house saying, don't touch my body. Mom, she's touching my body. And I say, like if somebody wants to hug them or even like just puts their hand on their shoulder. So when they're little, it's a little annoying. But as they get older, what they learn is that you have the right to tell anybody no, including me, because that helps keep them safe. That lets them know that my body is my body and you don't have the right to do things to my body that I don't like. How many of us for me, because I didn't get body autonomy as a child, often this does make us more susceptible to abuse. I think many a Black girl has been physically and sexually abused, has been sexually abused specifically because we were taught we don't have body autonomy. And Tanya TKO did a video recently on is it Lisa Bonet, the girl from the Cosby Show? What's her name? A video where the father of her daughter was rubbing the chest, the adolescent, she probably only has little, mosquito bite breasts because she's young, but he was rubbing back and forth on her breast, right? And a lot of the women were saying, I touch my kids like this. I touch my kids like this. But honestly, even before my children um, develop like that, I stop touching them in those areas. Like I might give a little baby, a little toddler, a little swat on the butt, like a little playful, like, go on, get out of here. But at some point around, 4, I stopped doing that because they need to learn that there are parts of their bodies that it's not okay for people to touch without their permission, right? And so if they get comfortable with me touching their chest or their butt or their thigh, then they won't know to be uncomfortable when somebody does that. They'll feel, okay, adults have the right to do this. A lot of times I'll tell my kids, nobody but me, right? So I might come in here because you're having a problem getting your pants on, but only mom. And even then, I'll turn my head like you have privacy. You know what I mean? You can bathe by yourself. So a lot of times, you know, we can be setting our children up to be abused because of the liberty that we take with them. And what we should be is not training children to give us liberty as moms. We should be training our kids to understand what their boundaries are. Like our job as mothers is to raise people who can keep themselves safe, who can treat others well, who will be mentally healthy, emotionally healthy. And so a lot of times what I find in our motherhood is that we want our children to behave and accept the things that make our lives the most convenient. What is going to cause me as mom the least amount of problems? And that is how I'm going to run my household. But maybe it's time we rethink our mothering strategy because mothering isn't about us, right? Being the most comfortable. Mothering is about us creating people that are prepared for the world. So take a step back when we're talking about abuse, because abuse looks a lot of ways, and ask yourself, is the way that I'm mothering preparing them for the world, or is the way that I'm mothering trying to make my job as a mother less stressful? What's my goal here? Is my goal to have things run in a way that doesn't stress me out, or to have things run in a way that creates good people, right? Strong people, healthy minded people. I don't know if we I don't know if we consistently think like that. That's how I always check myself at least. That's how I check myself in my decisions. Like, okay, Irene, why are you doing this? Are you doing this because this is easier for you? This is less inconvenient for you? This is less annoying for you? Are you doing this because this is best for them? And I try to be honest with myself about it. Something else that can lead to abuse of children is when you have a non-biological parent in the home. I did a whole video on this, so I'm not going to go into that one as much. Like, how do we navigate that if we're wanting to get married as women, um, and we're bringing a new party into our home? Like, what is the safest way for us to do that? And I have a whole conversation on single mothers and the protection of children. So I'm not going to remake that video in this live, but that's like a whole conversation that I had because I feel very passionately about that. Um, None of us wants to be alone forever. Well, some of us might, but there's a right way and a wrong way to integrate new people into our homes. And it really should be integrating one person, right? Your child becomes in a more compromising situation with every new person you bring into the home. And caregivers with attitudes that accept or justify violence and aggression. In the Black community, I feel like this is super common. I'm gonna just keep it real. I'm just gonna keep it real. In the Black community, aggression towards children is considered okay. I cannot tell you how many times, how many times I've had adult Black people tell me like that little kids know exactly what they're doing. We look at children, and I'm not saying children aren't smart, But we look at children like this little nigga knows exactly what he is doing. She is fast. Did you see the way she looked at me? I'm just like, these are kids. Y'all are getting hyped like these are adults that are disrespecting you. These are children. These are babies. This person has been on the earth 2 years, 5 years, 10 years they've been on the planet. Chill out. These are kids. These are children. We do justify the way we talk to them. We do justify physical aggression toward children. I mean, I've seen, and many of us have been this person, right? Grabbing a child's arm and just yanking their arm. It's like their little tiny arm, you're going to yank their whole arm out of socket. Just yanking the kid around, as if it makes sense, just slapping the kid, just smack out of nowhere. The most traumatic thing for me is when I see kids that are real flinchy. If your kid is flinchy today, if you approach your kid too quickly and they like start flinching because they're accustomed to you just coming out of nowhere and just smacking the hell out of them or just hitting them out of nowhere, no warning, no nothing, maybe reevaluate your motherhood. Why the heck is your kid flinching? Like when you make a rapid movement toward your own child, they should not recoil away from you in fear. That that should be a reality check to you as a mom. Like, whoa, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Rapid movements toward my own offspring should not make them be like, oh no, protect myself. I let me brace myself for getting harmed. Is your child bracing themselves for harm if you move too quick around them? Do you know a mom that you're friends with or family with that you see that their children have this reaction to adults? Are we comfortable having conversations with each other and stopping this support of harming children to the point where children have the expectation? Because you know what that flinch says? That flinch tells us that they have the expectation that they are not safe. That's what that flinch says. At any time, I can get it. And how can we feel good about ourselves if we have children around us who feel that at any time somebody might harm me? And let me just brace myself to be hurt. Think about that. Yes, step parents disciplining children. That I think that is a whole conversation we should have. Like in a blended family, how does discipline work? I think I think that is a really good conversation that we could have one day. I think we could have a whole live just on like how does that work? Because so many of us are, even myself, right? We are in blended families. And what does that look like? I think we could have a whole conversation surrounding that. Communities where families frequently experience food insecurity. Food. Can we just get to the heart of the fact that so many of our people are poor? And when there's a lack of food, there can be neglect and abuse. Just seriously, there can be neglect and abuse. Um, and this is where prioritizing your children over yourself can be difficult for some people. Now, this may not be your struggle, but I've definitely seen this. I've definitely seen skinny kids with a big fat mom. And I know they don't have much money, but this woman is big and fat and portly. So she's clearly eating the lion's share of the food. And I know this is a touchy thing, and I'm not fat shaming. I'm saying, are you yelling at your kids for grabbing a bag of chips or for eating an orange, but you have eaten enough food to feed your whole family? And if we look in some of the poorer communities, we do see this. We see the huge portly mom right? And the kids are totally physically fit or they're even thin because food has become the coping mechanism. This goes back to like the addiction. Some people drink alcohol, some people smoke weed, some people do drugs, some people eat food, right? Food becomes that coping mechanism. And so they then become very possessive over food. I mean, I have somebody in my family that chained his refrigerator shut. There was a lock on the refrigerator. I don't know if anybody's seen that before. A lock on the refrigerator. Like you can't go in the house and get anything to drink without his permission because the refrigerator, that ish is locked. Okay, there's a lock. Now that's a very extreme case. But, it could also be that you're sitting there munching your life away, but the kid can't go get a piece of fruit out of the fruit bowl. Because when we're desperate, a lot of the times we start to chop down the people beneath us. Yeah, food can tell us a lot about what a person's going through. That's true. It also tells us a lot about our self-control, right? If we lack self-control, because we all find different ways to cope. Like I said, one person might cope with food, one person might cope with drugs, one person might cope with sex. So then you have a mom that's constantly bringing men in the house, and these aren't relationships, this is just for sex, right? There are a variety of ways as mothers when we are overwhelmed, when we don't have the support systems that we need, there are many ways that we cope. But a lot of times, the way that we may choose to cope with something can be damaging to our children. And we have to be open to checking these things on ourselves. We have to be open to it. Okay, I want to talk about, and I want to, I want to say this. When it comes to physical abuse of children, as mothers, we spend the most time with children. So it should not surprise you guys that children are most often physically abused by their mothers. And because many of us in the Black community, our community as a whole, falls into many of the risk categories for creating abusive situations, right? That single family home, the multiple children, the lack of resources, things like that. Our children are physically abused a great deal. And you have generations of Black children who have normalized being abused, and generations of Black mothers who are perpetuating abuse. And again, this is not a conversation to come down on mothers. A lot of times when we don't have honest conversations, it's hard for us to see ourselves. And that's why throughout this live, I've tried to be honest with you guys about areas that I had to see myself so that I could be the best mom I could be. And I want to like greatly encourage. I want to greatly encourage you guys as women, as future mothers or as current mothers. I want to encourage you guys to try to, first of all, listen to the hatred so many adults, even the men, but the women too, have toward women. And remember that every one of them has a mother. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. That is a very true statement. We have a lot of power as women. We are closer to every human being on this planet as they grow than anybody. Mothers are powerful creatures. When we are wise, when we respect motherhood for what it is, you guys know I have a great deal of respect for women. I truly think, and I'm not saying to be a mother is all that matters in womanhood, And for those without children, don't feel disrespected by this, but honestly, I do believe that motherhood, especially after a good old fashioned natural childbirth with no pain medications, motherhood itself, it epitomizes what women are, what womanhood is. And you can be a mother and never give birth to anybody. You can mother somebody even though you've never given birth. This is an area that we have a great deal of power in. We have a great deal of power in this area, but with the ability to have power comes the ability to do a lot of harm. And we can also do a lot of harm by how we approach our womanhood and our motherhood. And I feel very strongly about this, you guys. I really do. Like to if I could express to you how much respect I have for womanhood, I would, but I don't think I'm capable of really putting it into words in a way that you guys can fully grasp. And that's why I think it's so important that we be comfortable as women to take accountability for the things that we have power in and that we can change. And this doesn't negate the fact that the outside world, like I said, we're going to have a whole conversation about how men, their goal should be to make sure that women who are raising children and women who are pregnant are taken care of and not stressed out because that does affect their mothering. And even what you do to a woman while she's pregnant can affect how that baby's temperament comes out. Like studies have been done on this. So I think there's a responsibility that the culture and the community has toward women to ensure that we are safe and protected so we can be at our best. But at the end of the day, as women, the one thing we can't control how men treat us. We can't control how the community values us, but what we can control is what we choose to do with ourselves. And we can control the type of influence that we have on the next generation. And I want to see us as women cultivate a generation of people who have the level of respect for women that they ought to have, who respect their mothers in a way that they ought to. And we can do our part as women to cultivate that. I'm not saying we can do it alone. I'm saying we still have a role to play in this. And we must play our position. We must be wise. We must be prudent. We must bring our A game to the table as mothers. And we must be honest with each other. So we can have a short, I'm trying to think if I want to open up the panel or not, or if we should just leave it here. What do you guys think? Should we bother talking about this as a group or not? I'm a little bit concerned because a lot of times when I have these conversations with women, I have men that come up here and literally toss the spot and just undo all of the good that we're trying to do among ourselves. And that really kind of angers me. So I'm like hesitant because I don't want anybody to come up here being stupid during a productive conversation because there's always one or two just ignoramuses that choose to be destructive. Leave it? Okay, let's leave it then. Yeah, because you know how they like to toss the spot. You guys have seen it happen on my lives. I open up the panel and it's all going well, and then it just goes whoop, downhill. And then the women are walking away like, see, this is what I'm talking about. So let's just leave it. Let's just leave it. So, Smart Cookie said, do the panel. I need some suggestions. So how about we do, hmm, that's hard. Okay, let's do this another way. One, if we leave it. Two, if we open up the panel. And we'll just go with majority rules. I vote to leave it. I'm number one. But one, if we leave it. Two, open the panel. And we'll just go with majority rules. Okay, it seems like so far we have a lot of ones. Hmm. So are we half and half? It seems like some ones, some twos, it's like half and half. It seems like everybody's not voting, so some people don't have an opinion. One means keep it closed. One means leave it, don't have the panel. Two means have the panel. It seems like it seems like most of us are saying one. Yeah. I think there's like seven ones and eight twos. Yeah. Now it's the same. Cassandra said no, the men go up when she opens the panel. I rarely have gender specific panels. It looks like most people are ones. So Rissa said we won't go up. mm, let's leave it. I'll take a poll. How about that? It looks like it's kind of half and half. So what I'll do is I'll let the live stand and then I'll do a poll, a community poll, and we'll go with the poll. Because right now it seems like it's kind of split down the middle. So let's just leave it as is. If we need to continue this conversation, then um after this live has been up for a day, I'll just ask everybody if they think we should have a panel on it. And if the community says so, then we'll go about it that way. But for this, let's just leave it here because it seems pretty split, like straight down the middle as far as what you guys want to do. So just take what I said. It's just some food for thought. Like I said, I'm always working on my own motherhood. I encourage you guys to work on yours. You guys know it's all love. Um, but sometimes we just have to be honest and have some tough conversations and that's where we're going to grow. You know what I mean? That's where we're going to grow together. Together, we're going to grow. So, I'll talk to you guys later.